In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at syncing and grading footage from multiple cameras. With this technique, you'll be able to apply base grades to your footage before even starting your edit. Once you perform your multicam edit, your clips will already have your base corrections applied to them, giving you a great starting point for building your look. In this scenario, I have a scene from a narrative project that was shot with 3 different cameras with various color profiles. As you can see just by looking at the clips, the contrast and color temperature varies across all 4 shots. We're going to sync the footage into a multicam clip and then grade each clip individually to get them all looking more consistent. If done correctly, this can save you a lot of time as each clip will already be pre-graded once you start your multicam edit. First, let's highlight all 3 clips. Then right-click on any clip and select Create Multicam Source Sequence. You can sync using in points, out points, or timecode, but the easiest way to sync is by using sound. As long as reference audio was recorded on all cameras, Premiere will automatically align the waveforms to synchronize the clips. So we'll click to use audio, and then name the clip Scene 4H Multicam. Then click OK. The new multicam clip will appear in the project window, and we can view the result by double-clicking it. In the source window, we can now see all 3 synchronized clips, and we can clearly see the differences in color and contrast. So with that being said, we're now ready to start making corrections. But how do we get to the individual shots? If we right-click on the clip and select Open in Timeline, we can see all 3 shots in the timeline. Before we start grading, we should pick a hero shot, just like we would for any other scene. In this case, I think this shot will be the best because it clearly shows both characters as well as the environment surrounding them. For what we're about to do, we want to lay out the order that we intend to grade our shots from top to bottom. Our hero shot is currently on the top, which is what we want, but as we turn the track visibility off for track 3, the next shot is the close-up. Then underneath that is the wide 2 shot, which I'd like to correct second. So I'll drag the middle clip above video track 3, then drag the clip on video track 1 up to video track 2, and the clip on video track 4 down to video track 1. Okay, now our shot order is all set. Next, let's also find a good reference frame that works for all shots. Like we did in the shot-to-shot matching tutorial, we picked frames with a clear view of our subject's faces and then marked that spot with a marker. Let's see if we can get a frame that works for all 3 shots. I'll scrub through the multi-clip in the source window. This frame looks good at 2 minutes 22 seconds and 6 frames. I'll use the keyboard shortcut M to set a marker. And you'll see that the marker shows up in the timeline as well. We can drag our playhead while holding Shift, and it will snap right to that marker in the timeline. Lastly, let's open the video scopes. I'd also recommend that you close the source monitor. Sometimes the scopes can get confused as to what clip you want to monitor if you don't do this. Okay, so now we'll start by creating a base correction on our hero shot. With the top clip selected, I'll open the curves panel. Then with the Luma curve, I'm going to drag the bottom point to the right to drop the shadows so that they're just above 0. Now I'll bring the top point down so that the brightest highlights sit right about here. Then I'll make a point in the middle and drag up, and a point here for the undertones and drag up. That looks good. Now for color, I think that adding a little warmth to the midtones might be a good idea, so I'll go into the color wheels and do just that. Also, I think the saturation is a little too high, so I'll go to the basic correction panel and reduce it. Okay, so the base correction for our hero shot is all set. Now let's use that clip as a reference shot. In a regular timeline, we'd use the comparison view tool to compare a shot we want to color correct to our reference shot. But in the multicam environment, because we have long shots stacked one above the other, this tool wouldn't work. So there's no way to use this feature to compare a shot that's on top of shots on the tracks below. That's why we'll create our side-by-side comparison manually. We'll go into the Effect Controls panel and click the pen next to Opacity. Then I'll draw a shape that just cuts off the edges of the frame. We still want to be able to see both subjects. Now in the motion settings, with the X position control, I'll drag the shot to the right so I can just see the woman in both shots. The reason I'm picking the woman is there's a lens flare on the man. This can make matching confusing because of the contrast reduction lens flares can produce. So now that we're set up, I'll click on the second shot from the top to start matching. We'll again start with the curves. Now let's pull the bottom point to the right so that the shadow levels are similar to the hero shot, and the top point to the left to match the highlights. Now I'm going to make a point here in the middle and drag up to the left slightly. Then make a point here for the undertones and drag up and to the left slightly. Those adjustments push the highlights back up, so we'll bring them back down. Okay, that's looking better in terms of exposure, but we can see that the color is way off. To compare the saturation levels, I'll turn the shot on and off by clicking the track visibility while watching the vector scope. You can see the increased saturation in the shot as you turn it back on. So in the basic correction panel, we'll lower the saturation until the alignment of the two traces improve. In general, there's too much red in the shot, so using a combination of the temperature and tint controls, we'll move away from red. Right about there looks good. So I think the shot is in good shape. Alright, let's now work on the third and final shot. I'll turn off the track visibility for the middle clip, and then click on the top shot, and using the X position control, I'll drag to the right until I can see the woman in both shots. Then I'll click on the bottom clip. This clip is going to be much more challenging than the previous shot due to the flat camera profile it was shot with. Again, we'll start with the curves for exposure. I'll drag the bottom point to the right to match the shadows, then the top point to the left to match the highlights, and now I'll make a point here and drag up and to the left,
and another point here and drag down slightly.
I'll then need to readjust the highlights to restore them to their previous position. This time, I'm going to make color adjustments with the color wheels, and then if we need to adjust the saturation, we'll do that in the basic correction panel afterwards. I see a lot of blue in the shadows, so I'll start there by adding warm colors. Now I see a lot of magenta in the highlights, so I'll drag the highlight control towards green. Then I think we just need a little more warmth in the midtones, so I'll add that. Okay, lastly, I think the saturation did end up being a touch too high, so I'll go back to the basic correction panel and reduce it. Okay, now all three shots should be matching pretty well. I'll just need to go back to the top clip and reset the X position control, and also turn off the opacity effects.
I'll just need to turn the track visibility on for video track 2.
Now if I double click on the multi-clip in the project window, I can bring the source monitor back up showing all three shots together. This is looking much better now. If we needed to make any further adjustments, we can always do it by opening the multicam clip directly in the timeline like we did before. In the next tutorial, we'll take this concept even further using secondary tools to perfect the match. See you there.